Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Project Joyful podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Tutty, your medical herbalist and high performance coach. So, hey, Project Joyful isn't just about being happy. It's about consciously creating a life you love. It's about remembering how to reconnect with your soul-centered joy. You know, that joy that comes from doing what you love, from living on purpose, and from being in a life that allows you to experience deep joy moment by moment. So hey, let's get started, shall we?
Well, hello and welcome to episode number 54. Have you ever been in a situation where you've reviewed a team member's work and it just was not great? Instead of providing that feedback, you suck it up and you fix it yourself. You tell yourself it's quicker and it's easier if you do it yourself. Today, we're talking about the unintended consequences of taking this shortcut for you and your team. We're also lifting the lid on the 3 root causes likely to be driving this behaviour. And now, on to episode 54. So, you've been asked by a member of your team to check a task that they've completed. You take a look and it's just not great. What do? Do you A, fix it up because it's quicker and easier to do it yourself? B, do you put it to one side because you don't have the energy for that conversation right now? C, do you send it back with a list of corrections? Or D, do you sit down with them and talk through your expectations and what's missing? While options C and D are hypothetically the most appropriate response, we often resort to options A or B because sometimes you just need to get it done. Why are C and D the most appropriate? Well, it comes down to situational leadership and your assessment of how your team member needs to receive that feedback and the type of task that you're providing feedback on. If you're reacting rather than responding to your team by taking option A or B, then it's likely that you're getting in the way of your team being effective and resilient. Those 2 options are symptoms of a deeper issue. Choose option B and it's time to explore your natural management style. We talked about that in the last week's episode. The other underlying issue is whether you're generating the energy within yourself that's necessary for you to do the job and to be present both at work and at home. Make no mistake, it takes a lot of energy to be that manager. But the good news is that generating that amount of energy comes down to strategies, tactics and habits that support your mitochondria. So if you choose option A, do it yourself because it's quicker and easier, you're creating a team that will check out. You're teaching them that it's okay to not dig deep or apply critical thinking or do your best work. And at best, you're rewarding mediocrity. So let's imagine that you have a friend or a colleague who's a manager and he or she consistently does her team's work for them. How does that play out in her day? It could be affecting her productivity because she can't start her own work until 4 p.m. when the team starts to leave the office. It becomes a downward spiral. Keep rewarding your team by doing their work and they'll find new and novel ways to give you their work. So why do we do this? Why do we do our team's work for them? Well, there are 3 key reasons that come to mind. And these 3 reasons can show up in different ways, but they boil down to the same root cause. First up, what exactly is a manager there to do? This is especially prevalent amongst my technical experts. They tend to work in a culture where advancement is based on how well you do your current role or being the last person left in the team. Chances are, if you are the longest serving team member, you do know how to do everybody else's job. But just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. Use that knowledge to remove constraints or to hold the standard. Consistently communicate to your team what's acceptable. How you choose to do that comes back to situational leadership. Next up, comes back to your inherent management style. We talked about this in the last episode. So are you a people pleaser? Do you need to be liked by your team? Are you their best friend? Spend some time defining how you want to be as a manager. Reflect on your inherent style. Where are the gems? Where are the pitfalls in that inherent style? If you're doing your team's work because you simply don't have the energy to have that conversation yet again, then this comes down to your energy levels and your skills when it comes to providing feedback. We talk about providing effective feedback in the corporate SAGE effect. In essence, it's about preparing for that conversation, and we have a framework to help you do that. But it's not always about the skill set. This is the most common mistake I see. It's easier to go on a course and learn a new skill than it is to have an honest review of how our lifestyle is working with our body to generate the energy we need. Let me give you an example from a conversation I had with a client. We'll call him Robert, and in case this story reminds you of somebody, Robert isn't his real name. So he was managing a finance team, and he came to me because he realised that he didn't really care about his team's problems anymore, and that scared him because he knew deep down that he was a caring person. He wanted to know what he could do to connect with his team more, to have better quality conversations, and to stop dreading having to go to work. Sunday night was a sleepless night as he tossed and turned, worrying about the week ahead. As we began to unpack his life, I discovered that he was an only child and his dad had died when he was young. As a result, he had become responsible for his mum. His mum lived with him, his wife, and their 6-month-old daughter. Now, mum and the wife had different views about how the baby should be cared for, and he felt torn between the love he felt for his mum and the love for his wife. He was also being pulled in opposite directions by mum, wife, and his love for his daughter. He felt responsible for all three of them, and they were placing competing demands upon him and expecting him to side with them. He hadn't stopped caring for his team. He simply had no more energy to give. His subconscious had moved him into self-preservation mode. No amount of skill building would solve this problem, because the root cause was based on his identity and his lifestyle. Now, as a manager, I get it. Sometimes you need to get the job done. My invitation to you is that in those situations where you notice you are doing your team's job for them, take a look under the hood. What's really going on? From this point on, how can you reset your team's behaviour so that they become the captain of their ship, delivering you solutions and possibilities instead of problems that haven't been thought through and mediocre work? Focus on this, and you're on your way to building a high-functioning team. Sending you lots of love. Bye for now.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's podcast. Can I ask you a favour? If our conversation spoke to you today, could you please take a moment to leave a 5-star review? Your review will help people discover this podcast, and together we can create a world where there's even more love and more laughter. And if you want to hear more from the Project Joyful podcast, just click the subscribe button. Bye for now.